I'm Brad King, and this is Stories in Steel. On this episode of Stories in Steel, we sit down with one of my heroes, Dennis Ricklefs. From the time he was 16 years old, he's painted Ridler Pinstripe some of the most iconic vehicles ever, including multiple AMBR and Ridler winners. From his early days of painting at body shops, working at Don Kirby's Funny Car Factory, pinstriping and lettering for Boyd Coddington, John Butera, Chip Foose, and a rash of other amazing builders, to painting on Optimus Prime, TV's overhauling, and even cars lined at Disney's California Adventure, Dennis has left his mark and his flames on nearly everything. You and I have quite a history together. I will say it's been a pretty good 30 years. We've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of projects together, and I always laugh. I've always told people, they go, so you worked with Dennis a lot? I said, oh yeah, well, what's it like? I said, well, our biggest decision of the day. We show up. I said, we walk in. It's like, all right, we're gonna do that. I said, it's not a big deal. We're gonna see what you got to do. It's like, okay, that's what we're doing. He says, then we have to decide where we're going to have lunch. That's our big decision for the day. Where are we eating lunch? And people go, you're kidding. It's like, oh no, that's actually very serious. It's a 15-minute discussion right at the beginning before the day even starts. We're going to talk about where we're having lunch. After that, it's like, okay, let's go do the car truck. Where we go do it. So, you and I have had a lot of fun together, worked on some amazing projects. And now I get to sit here and talk about you growing up being you, which is quite amazing. So like with everybody else that we do this with, let's go back when you were a kid. I mean, you've been painting a long time. I know you were messing around with high school. You talked about that. So how far back does this go? When did you start messing with paint?
Well, it was in 1957, and I lived in Brookings, South Dakota. So I was 13 or 14 years old, depending on the time of the year. Like I said, the house we lived in was on Main Street, which was one of the highways that went across the state. And so one day I got out in front of the house and whatever, this 57 Chevy Sierra Gold Continental kit Chevrolet comes down Main Street. And I'm looking at this thing going, wow. I was able to get up close to the car. It had pinstripe on it had a Continental kit, and it had the little gold V, they put on the deck lid of a Bel Air. And that whole piece of this Continental kit had striping on it. Just all over it. And I seen there some little, just little dinky little marks down here, right? So I got up closer to it, and I'm thinking, is that a V? Yeah, that looks like a V. Anyway, so I got Von Dutch out of it. So I go back to the guy. He's still there. In the car. So I go, so what's that little name you got on the back deal right there? And he goes, well, he's the one that put the stripes on the car. Now, but he says, keep in mind, this is in California. That's where I had it done at. And this guy lives in California. That's where I got it done. Okay. So I go home and I'm thinking, I kind of like this stuff. It's freaking these stripes and stuff. I think it looks good on the car. And like I say, I'm like 14 years old. Whatever. So I go to a hardware store and I buy a little bottle of paint of some sort. I don't remember what it was, and I bought a little brush. So I go home and start messing with it on some cardboard or something. I forget now. Well, obviously I couldn't get an inch before it started messing up and doing whatever, you know what I mean? And by the college, there was a market, and it wasn't a name brand market or nothing, but they had like a liquor department, and they had a magazine rack. And they had a book there called Rod Custom, I think, or Carcraft or something. And it was advertised in there, pinstriping brushes. Ed Roth. Just a little deal, So I thought, so there's actually a striping brush. So I looked at it or whatever else. Well, you could send away for the brush. I mean, whatever else, which I didn't do because I didn't have the money to do it to start with. But anyway, at least I knew. Now I knew that the little things I was working on really were worthless in a way. But I kept working on them because I had them and whatever else, and I just kept working with it. My mom got remarried, and I was probably 14 or something at the time. We moved to California. And my first day at school, I watched Larry Watson's grapevine come out of the school parking lot out on the street. You know what I mean? And I ain't never seen a car like that before.
This iconic car now comes out of your school parking lot.
Well, that's where he went to school at.
That's awesome.
A couple of days, weeks later, whatever else, I can't tell you a time frame, but I'm walking home from school and sitting on a corner of a used car lot with a car, and to be honest, I can't remember what kind of car it was. At times I can remember. Right now I can't. I don't remember what kind of. It was like an early '50s car of some, convertible or something. I can't remember now what it was. But anyway, it was painted pink and white, and it had pinstriping on it, red pinstriping. And it had the same guy's name on the back of it as the '57 Chevrolet had on there, right? So I'm thinking, wow. One day, I started messing around and I found the striping brush in the little books, and now I knew what it looked like. And I found one that you could buy. And it was in Compton at a hardware store, and they had that, and I think they had one-shot paint, or they had some other kind of paint, that was comparable. I don't know. So I buy the brush, and then I just used the little paint I had at home and everything. It was a Grumbacher, if I remember right. A black handles, one with a chrome deal, and whatever. I think it was a Grumbacher. So I started messing with that. In those days, they had tin trash cans. Yeah, they were like what do you call that?
The galvanized
metal,
yes.
Tin or whatever you want to say. So anyway, one day I got home from school, I'm out in the garage, and this trash can is sitting in the backyard by the back door. And I'm thinking, I got this brush. I haven't tried this brush yet. So I got the paint out and the brush out and all that stuff. And I started messing around with it. I got it to work. I got it to work. Of sorts. So I thought, let's go around this deal here. So I put my hand in there and I just kept going around in circles on this freaking trash can. And the sides were that way too. They were 2 inches apart, roughly. So anyway, I thought, I better either wipe this off or go hide this trash can or something. Or my stepdad's going to have a shit fit.
Right.
So I hid it somewhere, in the backyard or something. I don't know. A couple of days later, I had to take it out to the street, and he came home early that day or whatever else. And so here's this trash can with these breaking lines all over it, sitting out there right where you could see it. Well, he had a pretty good idea. It was me, so he asked me, he goes, "Did you do that to the trash can?" Yeah. Really? Yeah. And why? Why did you do that? I like doing it. I thought it was fun. He says, well, it's a trash can, and the lines are real small. Whatever. I guess it's okay. Just leave it out there. It's okay. Well, then we got a new TV. It was a plastic TV. I flamed it. And by that time, I had bought myself a little compressor. Just, a little cylinder and whatever else. So I had air.
So he had to be used to you by now. Now he already knows that you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm a flame. Whatever. So I taped up these flames because I could see them in the little books, right? So I taped these flames off on the top of this, and everything. And I had a spray bomb or something. Anyway, I painted the flames in. I did the edges and all that shit. And next day, I striped it. I striped all the way around the edges and all that stuff. So he comes home, goes in the house, takes a shower, whatever, comes back out to relax, turn the TV on. What happened to the TV?
Flamed the TV. That's awesome.
Yeah. That was my first experience with a pinstriping brush.
Were you messing with it in high school? I mean, were you doing your friends' cars or bicycles or whatever?
Yeah, anything anybody wanted done. I mean, as a matter of fact, our friend McGregor, his parents lived right across the street from the back entrance to the high school, and we used to go over there after school.
Well, let me interrupt for just a second. So, yes, I gotta tell that story. So back when I had my first shop, my neighbor across the driveway had a cycle salvage place, and we're talking about striping. See, that's what I did. And he goes, "Oh, I used to hang out with this guy when I was in junior high and high school, and he pinstriped our stuff then." And he goes, "I don't know whatever became of it. He still does it or whatever." And so, what was his name? He goes, "Dennis Ricklefs." And I go, "You used to hang out with Dennis Ricklefs?" And he goes, "Well, you've heard of him?" I go, "Well, everybody's got heard of him." He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" So then I have to tell him the whole story, and I get a bunch of magazines, and I drag him over, and he's like, he had no idea, because he's not really a car guy, so he had no clue
He's a
motorcycle guy. So then he just kind of flipped it. He goes, "I used to hang out with this guy. This guy's like one of my friends from high school." So back to your story there. It was kind of funny that all of a sudden I had a tie-in to you before I ever met you. This is a few years before I met you, and yet my neighbor, grew up with you.
I mean, I had to walk to school, every day and walk home. Well, when I say that, there was always a group of us, so we were laughing and giggling and carrying on or whatever else, laughing at people and different things. So it wasn't like it was a bad deal. I mean, I'm just saying I had to walk back and forth to school, that's all. And here again, custom cars in Bellflower in the 50s and early 60s, I mean, that was like the norm. And then Larry was 4 years ahead of me in school. So, in other words, when he graduated, that's when I went to high school.
Okay.
So I never met him until later, when he, because Dick Jackson taught me all this stuff. Him and Larry were pals and different things. And that's how I had met Larry. And then over the years, became pretty close friends and stuff.
Let's go back to Dick Jackson. So who was he? I mean, how was he part of your life here?
Okay. He, well, first off, he worked for Barris Customs.
Okay.
Him and Junior Conway went to school together. And when I think Junior was a year or two younger than him, so when Dick got a job there with Barris's, Junior asked a year or so later, 6 months later, whatever, if he could get him a job there. And he got him a job there. So Dick was a painter there, and Junior became the painter there after Dick left. And Dick started Dick's Paint Studio in Compton. One day, the guy that lived down the street from Dick's shop asked the guy that worked with my buddy, he asked him if he knew anybody that had done striping or anything. And he goes, I don't really know anybody other than the fact that there's a guy at work that's got a neighbor that he's a young kid, but he does some striping, and he striped my helmets and stuff. Maybe a couple months ago or something, different things, So Dick says, my striper left because he's from back east and he was homesick. He wants to go back home. And I said, I can't blame him.
Sure.
He wants to go.
Let's go home.
I didn't ask him to stay or anything because he needs to go. So anyway, this guy went home, got the helmet that I painted and striped for him, and brought it back. And so Dick looked at it, and he told me, he says, tomorrow I'll tell your buddy at work that knows him to have him come by and see me. I went down there and met the guy with the helmet, that I painted the helmet for, and then he gave me Dick's phone number. So Mom took me over there. It was on Alondra Boulevard, like I said, about halfway between Atlantic and Long Beach Boulevard. So I went there, and Dick says, so you're the one, you painted this helmet, you painted that helmet for Joe down the street? Yeah. And he goes, he says, I don't do striping myself, but I have a lot I've worked to do the stripe. I mean, I paint motorcycle parts and helmets and all kinds of stuff, and occasionally a car and whatever else, you know. Besides, I just wondered if you'd be interested in helping me out doing the striping. Well, what am I going to say? I mean,
okay.
I'm drooling, you know what I mean? He didn't notice that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Luckily. But I mean, I'm drooling here. I mean, I'm in a regular body shop, and this guy's a custom painter, and blah, 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 you know what I mean? Anyway, so he goes, well, how about Saturdays to start off with? That way you don't, you know, I know you can't miss school or whatever, so, you know, but I'd like for you to come in after school at some point in time. But right now, why don't we just do Saturdays and just see how this goes? That's fine. So Mom takes me down there on Saturday morning, and I asked Dick, I go, well, what time do you leave? Or whatever, have my mom come back and pick me up. Oh, we usually work till 4 or 5, or, you know, whatever. Okay. But anyway, so that's how I started there. And then, I don't know, you know what the Max Miller Chevrolet is? The Impala, 58 Impala, it's all painted up and all that shit. Right. Well, Dick painted that.
Oh, yes, I know the car.
Okay. That's the first car that I striped.
Wow.
They let me stripe that car when I was, I don't know, 16 years old, or I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, I was young. But they let me stripe that car. And Mox, the guy that owns it, and his dad, they said, hey, kid, stripe it. I striped the dash, the door jambs, the freaking whole outside of that thing. And then Dick, he taught me how to mix pearls and candies and all that stuff. And then pretty soon he let me, you know, start putting pearls on the gas tanks and fenders and stuff. And then, you know, it just kind of went from there. And then one day he told me he had catering trucks to do.
Okay.
So then he says, just go up there and paint the front from the roof, the drip rail to the drip rail, off, you know, just paint it up there. That put 2 coats on it and come back down here, and I'll come in and I'll paint the body, and then we'll do that all over again on another one. So one Saturday he comes in and he goes, today's your day. I go, what do you mean today's my day? He goes, you're going to get up there and paint the roof. You're going to climb back down again and do the whole freaking body. So I went in, and he told me, he says, this is a freaking catering truck. He says, don't be afraid of it. He says, just put the paint in there and start on the roof, get a little feel, jump back down and start at the window, you know, the window thing right here, and just go from there down to the rocker, and that's it. So every Saturday, catering truck time. And Monday morning, it was Kelly time. Put a name on it, because Kelly worked there too.
Okay, so when did it end with Dick then? How far did that go from when you first went there as a kid?
When I left there, obviously I was painting cars, striping cars. I was doing everything I do today, if you want to say that. I mean, but I just wanted to start my own shop. I mean, I just wanted to be the boss, if you want to say that. You know?
That's awesome.
So I went out and found myself a Cadillac dealer that needed a painter. Worked there for a while, and then they had a shake up in the whole place. So I drove down the deal. We went down Firestone Boulevard. There was a Pontiac dealer, from Pontiac. First one that came up, pulled on against the curb, got in my car, went, and there was a body shop office. I went in the body shop office. Asked for the body shop manager, and the guy says, that's me. So I introduced myself. I told him my name's Dennis. The guy looked at me and he goes, when can you start? I told him, I'm here now. He goes, good. He says, the painter that we had, his wife just called 2 hours ago and told him he had appendicitis. He can't come to work for a couple of months. The first complete I painted there,
all right,
it was a Mercury. It was a Ford product and had 2 double stripes on it, you mean, which I sanded off when I sanded the car, right? When the body shop foreman gave me the car to do, the job to do, which I'm going to do the job or whatever, but he just says, can you put them stripes back on there? I put the stripes back on there. He goes, you sure? Yeah, put them back on there. We'd paint the car the last thing at night, you know, last thing we did, shut the booth door and air off and go home, you mean. Next morning, first thing I do is open up the booth, open all the doors up, and unwrap it, give it to the body man that needed to put it together or whatever. When I got there, and I wasn't late for work or nothing, when I got there, all the body man and a body shop foreman were in the spray booth. They says, "Who put these stripes on here?" And I go, "I did."
After he asked you, "Can you do this?" "Well, yeah, I can do it."
Yeah, well, see, they didn't believe me, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so, and then he goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, I mean, I told you, I striped the car or whatever else when you gave me the job, you mean?" And he goes, "Yeah, you did." And I said, "Yeah, I said, great, or whatever else." I just had no idea because it looks like a professional done it, not a young man that don't have any experience. I go, "Well, I got to tell you, this ain't my first job. This ain't my first stripe job. If that's what you're saying, but I love doing this stuff, but there's not enough work out there to just stripe cars all day long. There is for a few people, but not for, I can't start up a place and just do that. At this time, feed my 2 kids and myself and my wife. So anyway, that was kind of a joke for a while, about checking me out because of the stripe.
That's pretty good. So when did you start working for Kirby? When you were down there with Youngblood and Nat Quick and that whole group of guys?
Well, I worked in a body shop across the street from Kirby's at the time. And Youngblood worked over there, Nat Quick worked over there. So Kenny came over one day and he says, what do you think if you come when you got done work here, at 5 o'clock or whenever, you came over and helped me do some striping or something? Fine with me. If you want me to do it. Kenny goes, "Yeah, I don't like to stripe. I like to do the lettering and stuff. The stripes don't do nothing for me. And he can do it. That's not an issue." So I called the wife up and told her I was going to work a little bit late. And everything. Okay. And every night I'd go over there and help him do the deal. And Kirby would either pay me or sometimes Nat would pay me because it was his job or whatever else. And I saved all the money I made out of the funny car factory and bought my first house.
So those guys kept you busy then.
Huh?
Those guys kept you busy then.
Well, I went over there, like at 5 o'clock, and I worked sometimes till next morning. Went to work at the other place because that's the way race cars work.
Right. You were doing your painting and different things, and you started chasing the dealer work, doing striping in dealerships. Is that kind of how that went from the paint work to that? Is that kind of how you?
No, what happened was the dealership striping. A friend of mine was a painter at Jim Slemmon's Imports, which is a Mercedes dealer in Newport Beach, and they had a guy there, and I can't think of his name right now, but he had the account. And one day, he passed out in a car on the showroom floor, drunk. Well, I was doing the body shop when they needed something because he wouldn't go back there and service it. He wouldn't take the time to go back there and do that.
Right.
So the painter was a friend of mine. He says, if you want to, I can get you the body shop, but I can't get you there. So I did. And it wasn't every day, it wasn't every week, whatever else, but whenever they needed something done, I'd go down and stripe it, or else. And one day I went down there, and the general manager, that was the buddy of the other striper, he seen me out there, and he says, when you get done with that thing, he says, come to my office, I want to talk to you. I go, I'd finish what I was doing or whatever else, and I'd go to his office, and whatever. And he goes, Ron, he says, he's a friend of mine. I go, yeah, I know. He goes, he got drunk in a car on the showroom floor last week, and he passed out, and he didn't leave me no choice but to fire. So he says, here's the deal. You can have the whole place here. New cars, used cars, whatever. You have it all. Be here 2 days a week, because I think it'll take you 2 days a week to do it. If you can do it 1 day a week, that's fine, but I think you're going to need 2 days. So let's start out at 2, and if it doesn't work for you or whatever else, then we can deal with it then. He says, on Wednesday morning when you come, you bring me 2 or 3 off-road magazines, 2 or 3 hot rod magazines of some sort. So, we're talking about, say, 10 magazines. Okay, back then, magazines probably $2, I don't know,
right.
Whatever else. And he says, I know you get here before I do. So he says, just lay them on my desk. That's it. That's all I ask. That's all I want. And so basically what it is, it's your job to lose. If you don't bring me magazines, you lose. If you don't show up, you lose. I told him, not a problem. Anyway, I had 4 dealers. And it's really only 5 working days in a week. So, and Jim Sums I've done 2 days a week because I had to do the body shop and the new cars and the used cars. So that kept me busy. That was one of the best things that ever happened to me. As far as
was the dealership stuff. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's consistent every week.
Oh, yeah. Well, the only thing is you had to fight for your money with the office. Yeah, well, you've been through it.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, that was the only thing I didn't care for. But at the same time, if that's all that's going to go wrong, I'll live with it.
Right.
This
is in the 70s, and that kind of went there. Well, eventually you're doing what you're doing, and I'd seen different race cars you've worked on over the years, and the Boyd thing came around. But before the Boyd thing came around, I think you were kind of part of that group anyway. Before Boyd became Boyd, he was doing his machine work, and there was cars getting together, and Bob Bowder was doing his thing, and Butera was kind of in there, Fat Jack, and there was all these. It was all kind of that same group.
There's a whole group of people, in a way.
Right.
And I used to go to Boyd's house and do work. Okay. And before he went, basically went to work for him. But I went over to his house one night, and Diane came out the back door, and she said, "Boyd, you gotta get going. You're gonna be late." And he goes, I just want to finish this. No, you need that job. So, let's get going here so you're not late. So that's one of the other guys that's working on it. I go, where's he going? Well, he works at Disneyland at night. And he does this during the day, the cars. Oh, I didn't know that. I knew Boyd somewhat at that point, but I didn't realize he worked nights at Disneyland. And that's how I met Art Christmas.
Okay.
Because he used to come over there and have a beer with everybody and go home.
You started doing the Butera Boyd stuff. Now is when the really cool hot rods started coming around. You were doing dealership stuff, and these things started to kind of coming around. Is that kind of how that worked? Yep.
It came in slowly, if you want to say that. In other words, Boyd was my first customer, if you want to say that.
Because you've worked on some really iconic cars. If you go to Pete, you worked on Lime Fire, and I still see that car now. It makes me smile because I've worked on stuff right next to it over at the airport where it's at, and I just walk around and there's your name on the back of the car, and it just makes me smile. It's like, oh yeah, and because that car has been around a while. I've known some of the different owners, and it's a hugely iconic roadster.
Yeah. Pete, there's no issues with Pete. He would tell me a color he wanted to do something, and I'd tell him, what about this? He'd look at me for a minute, and he'd go, I knew when you said that. It's way better than my idea. Do it.
You've done something else that has never been done. You had a car that you had flamed and striped on the cover of the Smithsonian magazine. I think it's probably the only car that's actually been on the cover of the Smithsonian magazine. I don't know if there's had other
cars. One.
Yeah. And it was a pinstripe flame job you did, which, come on, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I was proud of that deal. Well, that Nomad is probably one of the most iconic cars I've done, just by what people tell me.
Right, the one you flamed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I painted the whole car. The whole deal. So.
Okay.
It wasn't just a flame job. Like I said, the whole thing's paneled, like an inch all the way around everything and whatever else. The dash is painted that way and blah blah. But I've been very, very fortunate because a lot of people that I was working for, they'd recommend me to somebody else, and they would just tell me, You know what I mean? I'm giving you this lead right here because I know that you won't put them ahead of me. Mm-hmm. So if there's a way that you can work this guy in without hurting me, I'm in. I'll give you his address and his phone number and recommend you. So, you know what I mean? And I would never, I never ever, you know, went over their head, you know, to go over and do a job for them, not taking care of a customer I had before them.
Right.
Because that's just not cool. You know,
No,
to
you're
me.
right.
To me, I mean,
You're
so.
right.
And when you get a guy like Pete or Boyd, he's in as long as you take care of him. I mean, and don't rape him.
You did cool stuff for him. You did terrorist stuff. That was always cool stuff. Little John stuff was always really
Well, see, that was a real, in my opinion, it don't get no better. I mean, you know, I know there's other machinists out there and different things, but I'm talking about the whole package.
Right.
The guy's freaking funny. He's smart. I mean, I'm talking about this he was smart.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
mean? So, like I said, I've been very, very lucky. Now, with that said, I have to. I'll be the first to admit that I feel I made my own luck too by taking care of the people that I was supposed to take care of. It's just like when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame at Grand National Roaster Show. I told my wife, and my son, I said, you know, when they call me up there, I'll basically take a U-turn and come right on back. Anyway, what I did is I just went up there and introduced myself. Basically, you know, just said, you know, how exciting it is to get an honor like this, and especially in front of my friends, and you know, like 5 minutes maybe. I mean, you know, at the most. And then at the end, I mean, before I said goodnight or whatever I said, I told him, I says, the only thing I wish is that some of I didn't say I said our friends were here this evening that aren't with us anymore. I walked off stage.
Right.
Well, this guy that I was talking about, the fabricator guy, his wife got up out of her seat, came over I wasn't back from the stage yet, or whatever you want to call it, and told my wife, now that was a speech. You know, I'll be 80 years old this year in November, and I don't want to quit. That's my problem. I mean, I don't want to.
Right.
It'd probably be nice to sit down and go to a bookkeeper and analyze my finances and see what he says to, you know, if I can afford to retire or whatever, you mean, or do something like that. But I just don't. I don't want to do that yet. 6 months from now, I might change my mind. I don't know.
Right. Well, thank you, Dennis, for sitting down with me and talking a little bit about your
it's been a
life.
pleasure. I mean, it's like I tell people, you know, I mean, that I'm probably one of the luckiest assholes in this trade, if you want to say that.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Instead of trying to introduce all the crew members on Stories in Steel, we figured it would be easier to show our audience a picture of us in action, and we turned it into a poster. Click on the link to purchase the complete set of one.